This is Algebra 2, Section 1 of Chapter 4. Solutions to a quadratic equation. The solutions to a quadratic equation are the points at which the function intersects the x-axis. The solutions are referred to as zeros, roots, or x-intercepts. Number of solutions. Your quadratic equation can have either two solutions, one solution, or no real solutions. Here is the graph for a quadratic equation that has two solutions only. Notice that the line passes through the x-intercept at two different places. Here is a graph of a quadratic equation that has one solution only. Notice that the graph or the line passes through the x-intercept only once. No real solutions. And last, here is a graph that shows a line that passes through the y-intercept only, or y-axis only, and does not pass through the x-axis. Therefore, it has no real solutions, since it does not pass through the x-intercept. Solve by graphing. Directions. We're going to do some examples here. So we're going to find the solutions to each quadratic equation by graphing. The first one is on your note sheet. The function of x equals x squared plus 2x minus 3. Here is the t-chart. When we plug in -4 for x, we get our y value, or our answer of y equals 5. When we plug in -3 into this equation, or this quadratic equation, our y value would be 0. When we plug in -2 into this equation, our y value is resulted in -3. And when we plug in -1 into this quadratic equation, our y value is resulted in -4, and so forth. To graph this, we just mark those x and y points, or those coordinate pairs, on the graph. Okay. Notice how at the circle, this graph has two solutions, or it passes through the x-intercept, or x-axis, twice at points -3, 0, and 1 and 0. So therefore, the solution of x equals -3, 1. Because your x, where it passes through the x-axis, is at -3 and at point 1. For number 2, the function of x equals -x squared minus 10x minus 25. Here is our t-chart once again. When we plug in -8, we get our y as -9. When we plug in -7 into that quadratic equation, our y value results in -4. When we plug in -6 into that equation, our y value is -1. When we plug in -5 into x for that equation, our y value results in 0, and you can go on. Now we would graph that. To see how many solutions this equation, or this quadratic equation, were to have. Notice that once you graph those points, the line only intersects or touches the x-axis at one point only, and that is at -5, 0, or where your x is -5 and your y is 0. That is your coordinate pair for your x-intercept. Therefore, this solution, there's only one solution for this quadratic equation. The solution is x equals -5, because that is where your line touches the x-axis, or intersects it. Here is number 3 on your note sheet. The function of x equals x squared minus 6x plus 8. Here is our t-chart where x and y. If we were to plug in 0 for this equation, we would result in a y that would equal 8. If we were to plug in 1 for this equation, we were to result in our y value equaling 3. If we were to plug in 2 for this equation, we would result in a y of 0, and so forth. So when you go ahead and graph those points, you notice that your line intersects the x-axis at two different places, at coordinate pair 2, 0, and 4, 0. Therefore, this graph has two solutions because it passes through the x-axis at two spots. X is at where x is 2 and y is 0, and at where x is 4 and y is 0 as well. So therefore, your solution would be x equals 2 and 4. Now try problems 4 through 7 on your own. Here are the answers for those problems. You can pause a minute and while you work out those problems, and then come back and check for the correct answers to your solutions. At number 4, the graph or the quadratic equation, it has two solutions as it passes through the x-axis at two different points. At point -7, 0, where x equals -7 and y equals 0, and at -4, 0, where x equals -4 and y equals 0. So your solution would be x equals -7 and -4. Number 5, x squared minus 9. Notice that this graph has two solutions as well, where the line passes through the x-intercept at two different spots. At coordinate pair -3, 0, and 3, 0. So your solution to this would be x equals -3 and 3. Number 6, 2x squared plus 6x. Once you do your t-chart and you plug in your values for x and y, you will get the following graph. Notice that your line passes through the x-axis two places as well. We're kind of noticing a theme here. So it passes through at point -3, 0, and at the origin of 0 and 0. So therefore, your x would equal, or your solution would be, x equals -3, 0. Number 7, we have the function of x equals -x squared plus 8x minus 17. Once you plug in your values and for x and y into your equation, and then you graph it, you will notice that the line does not intersect the x-axis at all. Therefore, there are no real solutions. So your solutions would be x equals 0, since there's no real solutions. Now we're going to do a factoring refresher. Okay, this should be a review for you guys from Algebra 1. Quadratic equations can be solved by factoring as well. Let's refresh our factoring skills. What is the greatest common factor, or GCF? The GCF is the greatest factor that divides two numbers. To find the GCF of two numbers, list the prime factors of each number. Multiply those factors both by numbers that they have in common. If there are no common prime factors, the GCF, or the greatest common factor, is 1. Set 1, the greatest common factor. So number 1 on the factoring refresher page of your notes is 12k minus 18. We want to first find the greatest common factor of 12k and 18. So what numbers go into both 12 and 18? Well, 1, 2, 3, and 6 go into both 12 and 18. Which one is the largest? That would be 6. So next we're going to divide each element by 6. So we would divide 12k by 6 and 18 or negative 18 by 6 as well. So our answer would be 6 times parentheses of 2k minus 3. Number 2, we have 40x to the 8th power times y plus 64x to the 4th power times y. What numbers go into both 40 and 64? Well, 1, 2, 4, and 8. Are there x's and y's in both elements? If so, what is the greatest common factor of x's and y's? Well, we notice that in 40x to the 8th power and times y plus 64x to the 4th power times y, we're going to look at our x's first. So in the first element, I have 8 x's to the power of 8. The second element, I have x is to the power of 4. So therefore, the greatest common factor or the greatest number of x's would be 4. Now we're going to look at y. In both of them, y only is to the first power. So therefore, our greatest common factor of y is 1. So we're going to take our greatest common factor of our integers, which is 8, and our greatest common factors of our variables, which is x to the 4th and y to the 1. We're going to divide each element by 8x to the 4th and y to the 1st. So our answer would be, we would put what we divide each element by outside of the parentheses. So we would have 8 to the x to the 4th times y, parentheses 5x to the 4th plus 8. Now try numbers 3 and 4 on your own. And here are the answers. You can go ahead and pause it if you want to work out the problems on your own, and then check for answers. So number 3 has 14m to the 6th minus 35m to the 3rd minus 7m squared. So our greatest common factor of all that would be 7m squared times parentheses 2m to the 4th minus 5m minus 1. Number 4, 3ab squared minus 5a squared b plus ab, 8ab, would be ab parentheses 3b minus 5a plus 8. When factoring, always look for a GCF first. Trinomials, a times x squared plus bx plus c, where a equals 1. So we have number 5 is x squared plus 14x plus 45. When solving this, look at the factors of c first. In this case, we would look at the 45. Factors of 45 include 1, 3, 5, and 9. Of those factors, which two numbers add up to equal b, or your center number? That would be 5 and 9. 5 plus 9 equals 14. So you want to set up your parentheses. So you put your x in your first space, plus, we're going to do plus because all signs in our trinomial is an addition sign. Then we're going to input our factors that add up to 14, and when you multiply, equal 45. So we're going to result in x plus 5 times x plus 9. And we can check our answer by using the FOIL method. Number 6, w squared minus 15w plus 26. So we have x minus 13 and x minus 2. Now let's practice number 7 through 12 on your own. And then continue on to the next recording for the remainder of this section.